In this tutorial, we're going to create an additive corrective animation for mixing tracks. Go to File and Load DynoRigStance.fxs. This is the default position that we put the rigged model into, from which we can create other animations from. We need to make a few changes to this model because it's not going to be a good additive animation. An additive animation has to have certain criteria. One being it needs to be from the setup position to the posed position, so that we can get accurate channels and accurate values to add on top of animation that already exists. So we want to keep some positions and remove some of the other positions to the neutral pose, so that only the positions we want to keep will remain intact. And these positions, if we just switch between setup and animate, go to a front view, is in setup mode the arms are splayed out, the legs are splayed out, the feet are straight forward. Inside animate, the feet are closer in, the arms are tucked in, and the mouth is closed. So those are the channels we need to keep, and we need to get rid of everything else, such as the forward and backward placement, and the S-curves and counter curves inside the spine and the tail. So we'll create this animation first, and then we'll describe the problem that we'll run into later. So for here, on frame 10, I'm going to set the, pick something inside the hierarchy. I'm going to set the group to Dyno body keys. Make sure you're in parent coordinate system when you move stuff around, or turn off coordsys. Pick the front foot, select the Z translate, and that's the channel we need to remove back to its default setup position. You can also click on the button down here in the motion block to select the Z channel and just reset that channel, nothing else. So that channel will go back to its setup position. Same thing with the rear leg, and make sure that Z is set on that channel. Go to the top view. We're going to reset the rotation on the hips. So just hit the rotation button on the hips, on the spine. I'll zoom out here and reset the rotation on the tail. We don't want the tail to add any extra animation on top. We just want the sideways movement of the feet and the hands to be able to be added back on top when we blend this down. So this is the animation that we need. We have our body key group, so tap the enter key, create this key at frame 10, go back to 0, into setup, and let's copy the setup position in at frame 0. So now we have a 10 frame animation that goes from the default position and starts generating values that take it from the default position to the posed neutral stance pose. This is our additive animation that will add correctly onto any other animations that we have. Into compose. Let's create this one. We'll just call it stance. It's going to use the current group motion. We don't change any of the settings here. We will just clip that out. So now we have the stance clip. Right click, let's load another clip in the motion folder, the walk clip. Go to tracks, create a new track. Let's add our walk. Make sure we're on frame 0 and add in the stance. So we'll deactivate our additive track for right now and take a look at the problem we're going to run into. So we have our walk cycle going on here. Set the in and out points here so we have a good loop. So this walk cycle is running great. Looks the same as when we last created it. Now we know we can use the mix options inside this track to add a percentage of this down. So it's going to mix down to 0 as a percentage if we need to. I'm going to undo that and set mix to a static variable so that we can set this percentage throughout the animation without keyframing it. So mix of 1 is 100% applied from the clip into the 3D view. So if we mix this down to say a 50% walk and take a walk, it looks great from the side view. We're having a pretty good look. Halfway small walk. We've changed our stride length. He's taking smaller steps. But if we switch to the front view, the arms are starting to splay out, and the legs are starting to splay out, and the toes are starting to curl in back to their neutral position. The mouth is halfway open. We're not getting a perfect blend. At first blush it looks great, but we're not getting a perfect blend because now we have this artifacting. What's being introduced is our pose. We're basically blending between our walk cycle and our setup position. So enter our additive animation. Let's change that to additive now and make a few changes here. First we'll stretch this to match the walk, so now they're synchronized, and we make time a static variable and set it to 0.99. Can't set it to 1 because 1 is the same as frame 0, which is our setup position, and it will just pop. If you remember, if you move time beyond 1, it repeats itself. So now what we're left with is the mix on the track. And I'm going to set this mix to a static pose 2 so that we can mix anywhere along the timeline and see the changes. So right now it's set to a mix of 1, which crosses the arms in. If this track is mixed at 50%, we need to, in order to recorrect the pose, mix our corrective position in at 50% as well, and he shows up in the correct spot. So just so you can see this again, I'm going to deactivate that, set the mix on this back to 1, and the arms are in the right spot. Activate this, set it to 0, the arms are in the right spot. So now if we mix this down to 50% of the walk cycle, mix this track up to 50% to recorrect those positions, our walk cycle is intact on the front and it looks correct. So the only thing we've scaled are the curves that didn't change, and the curves that didn't change are the forward motions and the up and down motions. So he's taking smaller walks. So what do we do if we want to take even smaller steps? Well, if we mix this down to, say, 25% of the walk, he's taking smaller walks. So we mix this one up to 0.75% so that the correction stays intact. His feet are in the correct spot, but the movement that wasn't part of this additive animation is scaled correctly. You see the mouth is still closed, the arms are still down, the feet aren't splayed out or turned inward. So that's how the corrective animation goes, and it goes the opposite way too. If your mix is up, say you're doing 90, you can use the mix now to set your stride length as well and recorrect any artifacting that happens, the arms splaying out, the feet splaying out, the hands opening, by mixing this guy down to the remainder of that so that they add together to equal 1. I'm going to set this to 50% again so you can see, set that to 50, move this one up to 50 so that the addition of both of those clips correct the spots that are moving out of place. So while we're in Compose, let's select the stance clip. We will save the selected clip. We'll just call it stance. Let's go to File, and we will save this scene as Dino Stance, not Dino Rig Stance.